The Cleveland Browns star pass rusher and reigning NFL Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett, has requested a trade. So we're going to talk about whether or not the Falcons should pursue Garrett. But make sure to subscribe when news and rumors breaks like this. We are the first to get you a video. We had some breaking news in the NFL world this morning when Myles Garrett officially requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. And if you know me, it's been a very busy morning here at Chat Sports. So I want to talk about whether or not the Falcons should pursue Myles Garrett, what a trade could look like, and ultimately, if I think they have a real chance of getting Garrett. Disclaimer, I will not say in today's episode Myles Garrett is a Falcon, so I'm sorry to let some of you down here. But we had Garrett put out a statement this morning that I think is really important to look at because obviously for Browns fans and the Browns themselves, it makes a lot more sense to kind of dissect. But the rest of the NFL should also pay close attention to it, especially to the middle part there where he talks about how he's not looking for a one-way trip from Cleveland to Canton, which is what GM Andrew Berry said at the end of the year press conference. He is looking for Super Bowl rings, and he is not going to be complacent. AKA, money is not going to make this situation go away. And with that, the Falcons should 100% call Cleveland. I don't think the Browns can just give him a big fat contract extension or raise and say, are you happy now? And Garrett goes, yeah. Most times when players request a trade, it can be satisfied with a new contract. Now, they never really come out and say, I want a new contract, because then they kind of paint themselves as being greedy and it doesn't look good with the fan base. But in this case, Garrett is making it very clear this is not a money thing for me. This is a pursuit of a Super Bowl that he does not believe can be accomplished in Cleveland. So the only way I see this ending is the Browns somehow put together an incredible PowerPoint to convince him that they can't win a Super Bowl, or they keep him hostage, which is not a very good outcome for anyone, or they trade him. So that's where the Falcons enter the mix here. He requested a trade after this 3-14 season for the Browns. He's got 2 years left on his deal. Now, the Browns are a manipulative team when it comes to the salary cap. They always push money into the future. It actually would not be very expensive for a team to go out and trade for Garrett when it comes to his contract. His base salary for the next couple of years is pretty low. There's no guaranteed money left on his deal. So financially, if you're wondering, it's too expensive, they can't get him. That's not true. Any team can financially trade for Myles Garrett if they want to. Now, draft capital is a different thing. Assets you give up to get Garrett. But this is a player worth whatever picks you have. We're talking about a guy who has 102.5 career sacks. That's the second most since 2017 in the NFL, only trailing TJ Watt. He has 6 seasons with 12-plus sacks, 6th most in NFL history. I don't think I need to explain that Garrett's resume speaks for itself. This is a no-doubter future Hall of Fame player who won Defensive Player of the Year in 2023. He comes off a second straight 14-sack season. The guy has more forced fumbles in the last 2 years than anyone had sacks for the Falcons this past season or the season before that. Just forced fumbles. So if you're wondering if today's video is all about telling you if Myles Garrett is good or not, I'm not going to waste my time or your time when I say Myles Garrett is a Hall of Fame player that every team should be interested in. This is a player in my eyes who is worth the draft picks. This is someone worth giving up a lot for. He's just that good. So now we land at what would it cost to get him? This is a rough trade idea. It's just a starting point. But I think it would cost this year's first-round draft pick, a day 2 draft pick, maybe a third, maybe a second, along with next year's first-round pick. We're talking 2 firsts and a day 2 draft pick. Don't get hung up on the, like, if it's a third instead of a second, so be it. But we're not quite splitting hairs because there is some difference between a third-round pick and a second-round pick. But this just gives you a rough idea. It's somewhat similar to what the Raiders got from Chicago when they traded Khalil Mack, which is the closest blueprint we have to this trade for a Defensive Player of the Year, getting dealt in somewhat the prime of his career. Mac was a little bit younger when he was traded to the Bears, but not by a whole lot. So this is just to kind of get you guys something to chew on a little bit, but don't look at this as concrete. That's what it's going to cost. I'm just giving you a rough idea. So now the question you might be asking yourself is, Myles Garrett worth those picks? Is he worth 2 firsts, a second, or a third? Is he worth all those premium draft picks? I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you if Myles Garrett is going to come to Atlanta and then live up to all the picks that were given up for him. What I do have, and you can kind of guess what's coming next, is history. I fucking love history. And what I can do here is I can look at what could the Falcons have gotten with those picks in previous drafts. Here's the 2024 NFL Draft. If they had the 15th, the 24th, which I'm using as the future first, is, hey, a early-ish playoff exit, but just a placeholder. And that 46 overall pick, round number 2. Ask yourself, would you rather have Myles Garrett or Leatu Latu, Terrion Arnold, and Jonathan Brooks? I'd rather have Myles Garrett, but that's one draft. How about 2023? Would you rather have Garrett or Will McDonald, Deonte Banks, and Keion White? I'd rather have Myles Garrett. Let's go one step further. Let's broaden our sample size. How about 2022? Kenyon Green, who's not even starting. Tyler Smith, who's a quality starter. Josh Pascal, who's a rotational guy. I'd rather have Myles Garrett. Atlanta should pursue. Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris, I don't want to say would be dumb, but they need to pick up the phone and at least inquire and see what the cost would be for Garrett. Now, the Browns have made it very clear to Garrett and to anyone who will listen, they have no interest in trading Myles Garrett. Andrew Berry said this to reporters at the Senior Bowl a few days ago. Jeremy Fowler reiterated that today, that he is hearing Andrew Berry, the GM in Cleveland, has no interest in trading Garrett, which leads us to a potential tough situation. Could this end in a holdout, right? What if this drags on through the draft, into July, into August? Andrew Berry, smart guy, Harvard grad, I would think knows if this drags out into August and they trade him during training camp, like Khalil Mack and the Raiders, the Browns are going to get 2026 and 2027 draft picks. Andrew Berry might be fired before he can make any of those picks. If he trades Garrett and they have another bad season like this past year, I don't see him coming back. So now he is trading a player and never going to reap the benefits, if any, because you're probably not going to replace Garrett with those picks anyway, but you never even get a shot at it. So Berry has to know, if I ultimately drag my feet and enter a Mexican standoff and I end up dealing him in August, I just traded away the best player in franchise history, and I also signed my death certificate because we're going to suck now. I'm going to get fired, and I don't even get to use the picks that I got for Garrett. The next guy who replaces me does. And that might be a big enough motivating factor for Berry to go, if we're going to trade him, we have to trade him now so I can at least make a pick or two with the selections that I get back in a trade. That's going to be something that factors in heavily. So let me know, do you want to trade for Myles Garrett? Give me a yes or give me a no in the comment section below. Is this something you want to pursue? We did a mailbag, I wouldn't say video about this. We got a question on our mailbag on Saturday, and I, wrongfully so, said I don't think the Browns are going to trade Myles Garrett, so I don't see this as a viable path moving forward. I wouldn't say this was a, surprise at the level of like Luka getting traded, but while Myles Garrett did hint at a potential trade request at the end of the season, not many people thought a month into the offseason he was going to request a trade. So, hand up, I was wrong, and it was a big surprise to me and a lot of people. Now, next up on the show, why Atlanta would be a perfect spot for Garrett and for the Browns to negotiate a trade with. That's like the most important part because Garrett does not have a no-trade clause, so he'll be shipped off wherever wherever the Browns want him to go. First, though, a big special shout out to our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has this awesome feature called Game Time Picks. And what that does is it makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. See, all you do on Game Time Picks is filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals. You can also filter by city. So if you're in Atlanta, you can see what concerts are going on, sporting events, of course, and other events like comedy shows and whatnot. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Do yourself a favor, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. I put all that information for you guys in the comments and description of today's video. Go check out the Braves in a little bit, the Hawks, or any other sporting event in your local area with Game Time. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's get back on track with Myles Garrett and why I think why the Falcons would be a very good destination. Because I go back to Garrett's trade request and him talking about wanting to go play for a contender. And now you have to factor in Garrett's ambitions to play for a contender, along with the Browns' ability to find a contending team to trade with that they would actually want to do business with. I think the Atlanta Falcons might be a win-win destination. Win-win-win. A win for the Falcons because they get Myles Garrett. A win for the Browns because they are trading with a team who has the 15th overall pick. Whereas other contending teams that might call, like the Bills, the Lions, the Commanders, are all picking in the late 20s. And the future first-round pick they get, the future first-round pick the Browns get from whichever team they trade Garrett to, they have to assume if it's the Buffalo Bills, will be the 28th pick at best. That's not very desirable for them. Whereas if you're the Browns and you get 4 phone calls, Cleveland gets a call from Atlanta, Detroit, Buffalo, and the Commies. If you're the Browns, which of those 4 teams do you think is going to give you the best draft pick in 2026? They would probably pick the Falcons. That might not be the right pick, but they're probably going to think, let's go with the team that did not just make an NFC or AFC championship game. And that team gives us a 15th overall pick in this year's draft, unlike the rest of that bunch right there. So you're getting an earlier pick this year and likely an earlier pick in next year's draft. That might be motivating enough for the Browns to go, we'll do business with Atlanta because they're going to give us the best draft capital in a trade. And the last win, Myles Garrett, he doesn't quite end up in maybe a contender of like one step away from winning the Super Bowl like the Bills are, but he's going to join a young, up-and-coming, talented roster that is not in a very tough division. It's not an unwinnable division. He's not going to play the Chiefs twice a year or anything like that. And that could be a good path to hosting playoff games, winning playoff games at home, and going to the Super Bowl. This might be a win-win-win for all 3 parties. If the Falcons do land Garrett, they will likely give him a contract extension. I just don't think you'd give up all those picks to only have 2 years of his service. So my guess is he's going to turn 30 years old in December, so 10 months from now. 4-year, $136 million extension. At that point, it'd be not quite reigning Defensive Player of the Year because the 2024 season will be the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, but 2 years removed, that makes him a $34 million man every season. Guarantee $75 million, so it's like a 3-year, $75 million deal. This is likely what I think Garrett's going to get. He's making $25 million a season right now. Nick Bosa makes $34 million. I think he wants to be closer to Nick Bosa. And just think about this. Imagine this defense. Myles Garrett, Grady Jarrett, Kaden Elliss, AJ Terrell, Jessie Bates. That is a defense that Terry Fontenot might mortgage the future for. That's a defense where he might go, I've had 4 straight losing seasons. I've got a roster that I think can compete. The only squeaky wheel is our lack of a pass rush. And who better to fix that problem than the guy who has the second most sacks in the NFL since entering the league in 2017? And now you put together a core of Penix, Bijan, London, Garrett, and Bates for the future. I know moving on from those draft picks might be tough for the Falcons, but looking at those last two groups of 5, Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot might still make it a lot easier and give up on the opportunity to draft Will McDonald and Jonathan Brooks for 2023 Defensive Player of the Year. This may be the ultimate lifeline for Atlanta. They've never had success at drafting and developing pass rushers, and now the best pass rusher in football is asking to be traded. And Atlanta is in a good spot of having a competitive roster and feeling like they are a contending team. So it's worth giving up all those assets for, sure, an older and expensive player, but still a proven player and a productive player. And they might just suck enough where the Browns would go, we'll do business with you. We don't want to trade Garrett to the Bills. So what? We could get the 29th pick this year and the 32nd pick next year? You got to think about this through the Browns' lens. If they get a phone call from the Falcons and the Bills, and all they are thinking about is who's going to give us the lowest draft picks? Who's going to give us the best picks? They'll probably bet on the Falcons. You may not like that. That's kind of disrespectful to Atlanta. That's probably what they're thinking. And that might just work in Atlanta's favor. So the Falcons, Terry, every team. I'm not here trying to shop off Myles Garrett, but if he wants a trade, you should do your homework on it. You should do your job. Pick up the phone and see what the asking price is. That's going to do it for us on today's episode. Thank you guys so much, as always, for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it. If you're still watching, the thumbs up button, drop an ATL in the comment section below.